Okay, shall we start?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening, all, and we are on to the fourth day of our project Cyber Suraksha training program. So on behalf of the organizing team, let me welcome all the participants to this program. I also take this opportunity to welcome our speaker, Professor Shabarinath Pillai. Actually, Shabri sir is also a part of the organization which is hosting this project, Cyber Suraksha. He is the president of the Internet Society Trivandrum chapter. So let me introduce the speaker to our audience. Professor Shabarinath Pillai is an electronics and communication engineer, and he is currently the faculty at St. Joseph's College, Palai. Initially, he was with the Information Kerala Mission in the networking division. He is also currently the Vice Chair, YP and SCT at IEEE India Council. Being a vibrant IEEE volunteer, he has officiated almost all positions in Kerala Section. He has officiated as Secretary, Treasurer, Vice Chair of the Kerala Section, and then Secretary of the Chair of the Student Activity Committee, the Vice Chair of Student Activity Committee, then Chair of the Distinguished Lecture Program. So this volunteering has won him laurels. This has been recognized globally as well as in the section. He has won the outstanding branch counselor award globally by IEEE, and also the outstanding branch counselor award of the Kerala section. He's also a good academician. His educational material is there in the Coursera. So with these words, let me invite Professor Shabarinath to deliberate on the security in social media. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that wonderful introduction as well. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to this session on security in social media. So with your permission, may I go ahead and share my screen? Yeah. I hope the screen is shared. Ellen, can you please confirm?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be talking about certain aspects on security in social media. Through this presentation, I'll be taking quite a few inputs from a very good friend of mine, Shahul Hamid, who's currently the Chief Technology Officer at Pure Solutions in Germany. He was earlier the Secretary of ISOC Trivandrum, and he was also a very good volunteer of IEEE. And we've worked together on various aspects. So this presentation is kind of a collaborative work with Shahul. Now, about me, well, I've been given a very elaborate introduction, so I think I can just go ahead and skip off this slide here. And what we will be discussing today predominantly is I intend to start with a couple of the questions that were asked day before yesterday. I'm sorry I couldn't attend yesterday, but I will surely go through the YouTube video. And then we'll move on to a few aspects on what we have to discuss today, on what security is, why it is important, and how can we ensure or try our best to ensure a little bit of security over social media. Now, one of the questions that came across the other day was why was Edward Snowden not, or why did the NSA not get enough information about Edward Snowden going about with his WikiLeaks? Now, this is one book that I would call to your attention, The Permanent Record, written by Edward Snowden himself. Now, you were already told that Edward Snowden was part of the team, so that was kind of an insider attack. But there's this beautiful information here that Edward Snowden was part of the team that created the system, which is used today worldwide to monitor and continuously, track people and, whatever. So Edward knew what was happening. And it was at one point, he was the person who built the system. And at one point, he understood that the ethical factors that he signed up for was not actually what is being happening at the NSA. And that was when he decided to go ahead and blow the whistle. So if you are at all interested in cybersecurity, this is one book that I would call your attention to. This is a beautiful read, but the word of caution here, the book is not easily available. But still, you can go ahead and try to get a copy of The Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. Now, this is just one of the books that he wrote, but yeah, a very beautiful read if you are a cybersecurity enthusiast. Now, to answer the second question that was put forward, that, on why Windows-based machines are more vulnerable to viruses and attacks when compared to Macs or when compared to Linux-based OSs. That was when Bell struck me that as organizers, maybe we should have had, try to pull in a talk on the, history of computing and how computing became what it is today. Now, I would anytime call these three people the Tri-murtis of computing. Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was the person who, kind of changed the way entire computing works. Because earlier, computers were kind of stuck with, there was the hardware and its firmware. So we were kind of stuck with Nokia-like of mobile phones, right? So earlier, when you purchased a mobile phone, you had a hardware and you had its software. No further additions could be made on it. So if you wanted a feature addition, you had to sell your mobile and go ahead and get one new. Now that was how computers were in those days, and that was when Steve Jobs was so tight thinking inside the Apple box, and that was when a huge company which manufactured PCs in those days, IBM. And then there's this very beautiful story of IBM coming to Bill Gates, and there was another person, Gary Kindle, in the way that itself could take an hours of talk. But the story is really beautiful. That Bill Gates brought out a system or brought out an operating system which could be installed on any machine. So it was kind of bringing in this flexibility onto hardware, that you can use the same piece of software on any hardware. And Richard Stallman, the third guy here, was working at IBM, but he did not like one of the passwords that was put across, because Richard Stallman was of the philosophy that knowledge has to be collaborative and it should not be logged across a password. And he decided to go ahead and write his own operating system and make it free for people out there. And that is what we know today as the GNU. We generally call this the Linux, but he preferred to call this GNU. The full form for GNU, it's very beautiful. It stands for GNU is not Unix. So Unix-based machines were what was around in those days. So Linux or GNU is based out of Unix. Mac was also based out of Unix, but it was so closed and tightly packed into the Macintosh ecosystem and their hardware. It was much later that Apple went to Intel to get a little bit of outside hardware, and that was when Hackintoshes also started to happen. So you see, as flexibility increased, hacking also kind of started off. So okay, there was a brief history about computing, but this was not what made computing so popular. Well, what made computing so popular is, number one, not the best of reasons. One of the reasons that made computing so popular was, in fact, piracy. Okay, piracy of Windows, because Bill Gates was so tight that if you wanted to purchase a license of his software, you had to purchase one for one machine. If you had two machines at home, you had to purchase a second license for your second machine. Now that created some unrest among the computing enthusiasts, and they decided to go ahead and pirate Windows. And it was, in fact, that piracy in itself that caused the vulnerability that later on became no entry points of viruses and malware into Windows. But GNU, on the other hand, was free. And so nobody had to hack into it. So if there was a security built into it, the security was there. Mac, on the other hand, was so tight into the Linux, into the Mac ecosystem. So people had no much of hacking to do, or did not need much of hacking to do it and do over there. But with Windows and with easy entry points, because of the piracy that caused of installing the basic operating system on your machine itself, caused so much of viruses. And that was and most of the viruses came in the versions of 95, 98, NT, and maybe the millennial edition, which was very unpopular. People did not even know about it. XP had huge vulnerabilities, and to a certain extent Windows 7 also had a little bit of vulnerabilities. But coming on to Windows 10, we do not hear much of vulnerabilities, because by that time most of the manufacturers on laptops comes with pre-installed Windows licenses. So more of piracy was kind of came down by the time you came to Windows 10, and that in itself will be one of the reasons of why attacks on Windows machines are also on the decline nowadays. Now, what made Linux so popular was a bachelor student project by Linus Torvalds. GNU, brought forward by Richard Stallman, was so beautiful, so powerful, but lacked one component, the kernel component, which was not robust enough. And that was what Linus Torvalds, as a BS student, did as his project. And he took everything else from GNU and just put his kernel, and he called his kernel Linux. Okay, and Linux is not Unix, was the full form for Linux. And Stallman actually wants Linux to be called GNU Linux, GNU Linux, because most of the part of this Linux operating system comes from GNU, and the kernel comes from Linux. And then there are a lot of other forks that comes around nowadays. So these were one of the reasons that made computing so popular. And of course, there was the ARPANET. Now, this is another talk that can go ahead for 1 hour or so, what the ARPANET is and how the internet came into being. And the ARPANET, was actually a Department of Defense project in which they wanted. At that time, there was this Cold War between the Russians and the Americans, and the Americans were so much, interested in keeping their military secrets diverse. In case of a nuclear attack by Russia, they did not want all of their military secrets to be buried down. So they wanted to keep their military secrets distributed at different locations, and then they pumped in truckloads of money into the universities to come up with a project where they can distribute their military files and secrets. And that was how the DARPANET was later brought forward as the ARPANET, which later with a lot of other people, Bob Kahn was part of the project of ARPANET, and then there was Tim Berners-Lee, who came up with the World Wide Web. And today you have the internet. Of course, advancement in computing and advancement in networking came in. But as a university project, ARPANET was predominantly designed as a trusted system. Now that is inherently the problem here, because the fundamental design of the internet and of computing is by trusting people at the other end. So there was this inherent factor of trust. So, and the distrust was not figured in. You could just say that the distrust was not figured in. And so Tim Berners-Lee, in a recent article that came out in 2019, says that Tim Berners-Lee, the person we call the father of the internet himself, wants the slide to be reversed because of so much of not that good things happening over the internet. Anyway, having said that, and I hope that sets the stage for today's talk, that the internet, the computing came forward, internet came forward on the basis of trust. And then, people, started to show their true colors, and the factor of distrust started to figure in. And the moment distrust starts to figure in, security becomes important. Now, why would you need security? Obviously, your privacy is a factor. Now, there are a certain category of people, especially youngsters, students that I speak with. What do I have to lose is a question that generally comes to your mind. But the point here is, you do have a lot to lose. You really do not know what you're losing right now at this moment of your life. Maybe it is 5 years down the line that you start to lose. There are recent articles that come in almost all popular media that even top police officers have been hacked. There are superintendents of police being personified, and people asking for money, saying that okay, this is Srijit IPS and I'm stuck at this place, I need some money immediately. And those are targeted to police officers. Okay, impersonating a police officer, the messages go to targeted police officers who know this particular person, and then they suddenly think, okay, this is my boss, and my boss is kind of stuck at a place, and people blindly, they go ahead and send money, and then they call up, sir, what happened to you? There were a couple of people who were keen enough to give him a call first before transferring the money, and that was when this racket was busted. So it is not just police officers here in Kerala. Educationalists as well are being targeted. There are a lot of examples where identity theft and fraud happens. And one thing that you have to note is, obviously, from the name of Edward Snowden's book, Permanent Record, once you have something put up on the internet, it is permanent. It is a permanent record of yourself. That in itself is a factor that you should safeguard. Now, for instance, excuse me, there is this very beautiful Google Maps timeline that I would call your attention to. I would want you to take time, take a note of this, and just log into this website and see what you were doing, what information about your travel does Google have with them. Unfortunately, I can't show you this. I would have loved to show you this right now, but the moment I came to know about this factor, I just logged in and I turned off all of these settings of my Google. I can just briefly show you on how to do those things. And so I can't show you about what this particular thing is right now, but I would call your attention to please log into Google Maps timeline and see what you were doing during the past 5 or 6 years. 6 years back, at what time, where did you travel? How did you travel? Were you in a bus or did you walk across the street? As the kind of information that Google Maps has on you. And that is just because of the location setting you have enabled on this device. So it is not necessary that you have the maps turned on at all times. Okay, it just needs you to have the location setting turned on. So the moment I came to know about this, I turned off my location setting and I went ahead to the timeline and deleted off my history and did a few bits of security tweaks, which I can show you. Now, one of the other things that I want to call your attention to is the loads of social media that is active on your phone as we speak. WhatsApp, obviously, we can't live without WhatsApp today, which is owned by Facebook. Facebook, another popular social media. I remember listening to a talk by Mini Ma'am around 3 years back, wherein she says that there are statistical reports that anybody in India would log into his Facebook account at least 15 times a day. And that was a shocker for me. And then I started to kind of monitor the kind of my Facebook activity. And that was when I got shocked and I decided that that has to reduce. Obviously, Instagram is the master of the town nowadays. Facebook was kind of my generation thing. Instagram is my, the next gen. My students right now and even my children mostly all the time on Instagram. And unfortunately, again, Instagram is Facebook owned, social media app. And then there's Telegram that people are nowadays more moving on to. There is Signal, Snapchat. I'm not sure if Snapchat is very popular around in Kerala and India. Clubhouse is the new kid in the town. It was there on iOS-based machines, but right now it is opened up on Android. And Clubhouse is a very, very vulnerable hotspot because I see very, very young girls and boys coming in to chat over here. And they unfortunately do not know that it is just the people who chat are listening to what they're speaking. There are around 500 or 600 people in the room listening to what just 5 or 6 people are communicating among themselves. And I listen to them sharing their phone numbers and personal details. Now that is very, very shocking, and that is a piece of information that has to go around to the next generation of people, that much more vulnerable than all the other apps out there is what Clubhouse is. And obviously Clubhouse was not designed for the purpose that it is being used nowadays, or for that matter every app. Now, one of the things that I would again call your attention to is please do not reuse your password. I would call your attention to this particular website here, Have I Been Pawned? It's a beautiful website wherein you can go ahead and check if your email ID has been breached by any network breach that has happened over the past few years. So I can just show you a small demonstration here, wherein you just need to go ahead and search for Have I Been Pawned? Oh, sorry, the spelling got yeah. Now, this is the website, Have I Been Pawned? It's a beautiful website wherein most of the recent breaches are listed. You can see that, Facebook accounts have been breached very recently. So much of Facebook data has been breached very recently. Money control is another very vulnerable, kind of place where people go ahead and put in most of their, financial portfolios and a lot of other accounts. So you can just type in your email ID here. I can just show you mine so that you get a feel of what happens here. So this is my email ID, and there are two options that you can see here. You can either see a red page coming up, or you can see a green page coming up. Now, if you see a red page coming up, I usually tell my students, please, there is nothing more to worry because you have already been pawned. If you see a green page, then you have to be very careful. You are vulnerable. So I can just show you, just click on pawn. Now there is a lot of checking happening in the back end, and this red page here shows that I have been pawned out there. You can just scroll down and see that there are these breaches from which this particular email ID and a lot of other details. Say for example, LinkedIn in May 2016. So this email ID has been used in LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has been breached. There are 164 million email addresses and passwords were exposed in a data breach from LinkedIn. From Dropbox in 2012, from Domino's India, in 2021. So be careful when you order pizza on Domino's, or not just Domino's, okay, for that matter, from any website out there. So these are the kind of things that can happen. So once you see that you are in threat, there's nothing to worry about. You just go ahead and change your security settings and go ahead and make a little bit of tweaks. I can as well show you something else. I can show you a different email ID, which can as well be checked, and this email ID has not been pawned till date. So I have to be very, very careful from now on this particular email ID and make sure that it's not being used at any unintended website. So that is a beautiful website that I would call your attention to. Please go ahead and check yourself, and if you find that your email ID, your address has been pawned at some point of time, please make it a point to go ahead and change your password. And a few tips to changing your password would be obviously something that the longer your password, the more secure it is going to be. Well, mandatory nowadays is just 8 characters, but keep it as long as possible. Use both uppercase and lower cases if possible, and of course, please do use numbers and special symbols as well. What you should never do is use your username as your password. Maybe none of your friends' name, your family name, and even when you have your security question put up. Please do be careful about your security question as well, because there was this popular information that came in. Reese Witherspoon, the actress of Legally Blonde, her email ID was hacked just because the security password she put up was the name of, she said, what is the name of my pet? And there was her pet's name as a security question. And on her Facebook account, she had, posted a picture with my favorite pet, so-and-so. Okay, so these are things which can happen. So please make sure that all of these things are linked, right? All of our social media profiles are linked so much. And every data that you put up somewhere can somehow be traced back to your identity and to find in your password as such. So a few tips on what your password should be and what your password should not be is given in here. But again, most important, please do not reuse your password. Now that creates a question. How am I going to remember truckloads of passwords, which are 12 characters long, which has capitals and smalls, which has special characters? Now, this is where I would call your attention to password managers. Now, these are specialized pieces of software which help you create random passwords, and you can save those passwords in these password managers, which acts as plugins to your browsers, maybe your Chrome or your Firefox, or even Brave Brave. Sorry. In the explorers, your browsers, as we call it. So there are plugins on your browsers which can save these passwords, which you can just open up in a couple of clicks, and you just need one single password which is truly secure and random, with which you can save all of these passwords somewhere. Now the point is, these passwords get saved encrypted, so not even the machine can see these passwords. Well, this is another very interesting fact, that even if you save your password on Gmail, Gmail server is supposed to have a copy of your password, right? They save your password in something called data encryption standard. So even Facebook or even Google is not supposed to see what your password is in plain text. So if my password is let me in, so the phrase let me in, Facebook or Google server should not be able to see let me in as such, but they see something, some encrypted form of this password. But in 2019, there was this information from Facebook that employees at Facebook could actually see plain text passwords of Instagram users. Now, this was again a privacy breach, a security breach that happened at Facebook very recently, and this was there were large hues and cries as well. So password managers, on the other hand, they save copies as encrypted within your machine itself. It mostly does not go into the server, and there are certain password managers which save a copy in some server so that you can access it from any point or anywhere in the world. Again, that might create a little bit of vulnerability, but a word of caution: when you use password managers, this might create a single point of failure. So if you lose your master password, as we call it, then all of your passwords are lost. And again, since password managers has loads of passwords in it and account usernames in it, it is obviously an easy target for adversaries. So you can use a password manager. LastPass or OnePass or Dashlane are examples. NordPass is another one. So you can just check out for password managers. And if you're more interested in securing your passwords, I would call your attention to this website here. You can just go ahead and search for Diceware. Now, Diceware is a very beautiful algorithm where the user is requested to keep a die with him, a six-faced cube dice with him. You can roll the dice and count or check the number that you see, and based out of the number, you go ahead and look up some dictionary, the Diceware set of words, dictionary of words, and pick up random words from that. And they ask you to at least choose 6 words from that dictionary and use that in sequence as your password. It's a beautiful read. I would request you to go ahead to this website and read about Diceware and using secure, truly random kind of passwords. A second, kind of security that you can try out is multi-factor authentication. There are certain websites that permit you, especially Gmail, Facebook, and all, permits you to use multi-factor authentication. So one of the systems of using multi-factor authentication is that you type in your username, your password, and the CAPTCHA, and then you get the system to send you a one-time password, and then you have to key in your one-time password as well. So you call that two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. And you may as well use authenticators, specialized authenticators like Google Authenticator. There is Microsoft Authenticator. So if you enable and kind of pair your softwares or your accounts to multi-factor authentication from Google, so every time you log in, it asks you for an additional PIN. You can just check out your mobile phone for generate a PIN and use that. So that produces this added advantage that you need to have your phone or access to your phone as well to log into your account. But please be aware that there are options for SIM cloning also. So there was so SIM cloning also may happen. So in that case, having a YubiKey will be most secure. Now YubiKey is a pen drive kind of a thing which you have to plug into the USB of your device, and using an authentication from YubiKey, you can go ahead and use multi-factor authentication. So you need that hardware connected to the USB, without which you cannot log into your machine. So YubiKey would be more secure when compared to SIMs, but I'm not sure if SIM cloning is very common in India, but it is a possibility. And yes, there are examples where it has happened. Okay. So how would you turn on two-factor authentication on Google? You can just open up your Google account. So you can just click on the gear on your Google page, select into navigate into the panel on security, sign into Google One. Okay, now Google One encompasses the entire Google ecosystem. So your Gmail, your Drive, everything comes into this Google One ecosystem. And there you can select two-step verification for a starter. There are a few steps on screen which you can just follow up. And every time you log in, you type in your username and your password, a message comes onto your phone, and you have to enable your logging in on your phone, or you can opt for an OTP. You can opt for anything. So you can just go ahead and log in. So that is one that I would call your attention to, because Google is your your lifeline right now. Obviously, for everyone, all of your banking details, your personal details, everything is with Google nowadays. Coming on to, I'm just checking the time. It is 8:04. So yes, I do have quite some time. Moving on to the social media that we need to call our attention to is WhatsApp, because WhatsApp supposedly is end-to-end encrypted. And there was this beautiful recent security or privacy policy change that was introduced. There were huge hue and cry, and they deferred that policy change implementation by 3 months. And right now, even though I still get warnings, which I have not complied with yet, I'm not sure. I'm just waiting to see what happens despite their warnings. Anyway. The point is, WhatsApp is a very popular social media platform today, which is closed source. Now that creates some problem here. WhatsApp says, or Facebook says, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, and the same thing was said about Instagrams as well. But we already know that Instagram was not as safe as it claimed to be. But since the source code is closed, we do not know what is happening at the back end. But they have, agreed upon a few factors on what is happening. Now, just to bring your attention to what end-to-end encryption is, say you have a message to be sent to your friend. Whatever your messages gets encrypted, and it is just an encrypted copy, so it is not hello Alice in plain text that shows up on the server. Only Alice is supposed to see what happens. All others in the between are supposed to see some gibberish characters. So that is what end-to-end encryption is all about. For starters, even though this is claimed, we are really not sure if it happens so. But they have already agreed that we're not sure if it happens on group chats. So personal end-to-end encryption might happen, but on group chats, we're not really sure if it happens. And also backups. For backups, WhatsApp has agreed that it is the backup service that has to ensure encryption, and not what that does not come under WhatsApp's privacy policy. So there is this beautiful, data linked to you app which or this tab that came up in the new iPhone 15 update. So until this point, we were actually not fully aware of what all data WhatsApp collects from our device. So with this update that came in, people actually started to know about what all data people or WhatsApp collects from us. See, WhatsApp collects so much, even diagnostic characteristics of your device. Why would WhatsApp need those information for? There was another example where in Uber, Uber collects information about battery status of the user. Now, based out of that, there were allegations that Uber charges exorbitant money if your battery is low and the time is towards the later parts of the day. And the weather in your location is heavy rain. If you have very heavy rain, then Uber puts in surcharges. So these are the kind of information they collect from your device. WhatsApp, on the other hand, collects so much of information, and they agree that backing up of your data to Google Drive or to iCloud is insecure. So if you even though say that all of your data on WhatsApp is secure, it actually is not secure. One thing that we can do is to completely disable the backup chats feature on your WhatsApp, and also kind of enable two-factor authentication. WhatsApp also gives you the opportunity for two-factor authentication. Now, showing security key notifications is a very good system, which Signal does inherently. Signal is another application that is used for pretty much the same sort of application. So this can change, this notification or this security pin change can happen on two instances. If the user at the other end goes ahead and reinstalls his machine, then a new pin gets generated, and it is based out of this pin that your encryption happens. It is kind of a secret key for the encryption to happen. Maybe there are chances for something called man-in-the-middle attack as well. So maybe a secondary user comes in and enables, WhatsApp on that particular number. Now, this has happened to a teacher here in Kerala very recently, when this teacher because inherently there is this trust factor, right? And there was this trust factor. Because of this trust factor, she went ahead and shared her whole screen in her class, and there was this mischievous student who used the teacher's phone number to go ahead and install her WhatsApp on his device. And there is usually an OTP which comes in, and since the screen was shared, the OTP notification came up on the class, and he just noted down that OTP and went ahead and installed WhatsApp on his device, and went ahead and do a little bit of mischievous thing. So there are kinds of attacks which may happen because of certain inherent vulnerabilities that happen from our end as well. So we have to be careful when you share your full screen. It was a message that I want to inherently give you with that message. So you can go ahead and turn on the show security notifications. You can just go into settings, account security, and slide the show security notifications to the right. So if any one of your friend people of your WhatsApp contact list changes their security pin, you get a notification, and that there is some change that has happened to this particular person's WhatsApp. Maybe in the next call you can casually ask him, did you change your WhatsApp? Was there some change in your WhatsApp installation? And that will kind of trigger if there has been some sort of malpractice happening in between. Now, alternatives to WhatsApp, Signal is a very good alternative, which does not collect much of information from users. It is just a phone number, and this phone number is usually not tagged to any person or his identity. So Signal, being open source, again, Signal is open source, so you can go ahead and check the source code if you want. Telegram, on the other hand, is much more feature rich. and you can it doesn't eat up space from your device as well. So both of these applications has truckloads of features more when compared to WhatsApp, but eventually you have seen trolls that people try to migrate from WhatsApp to Signal, but eventually they go back to WhatsApp because most of their friends are not registered on Signal or Telegram. And so for communications to happen, people have to stick with the WhatsApp nowadays. So these are a couple of options which you can go ahead and check. And this is one beautiful slide here taken from information on iOS. The data linked to you, you can see for the Signal app has absolutely no data linked to your personal identity, but WhatsApp has so much of data linked to your personal identity. Telegram, on the other hand, has very few, just your contacts and a few identifiers. iMessage on the iPhone has very few, but WhatsApp, on the other hand, has truckloads of your information with them. Without giving access to these informations, WhatsApp does not work on your device. So Facebook and Instagram, again, on iOS, you can see what happens. Obviously, this is kind of open information that close to 84 billion US dollars of advertising money came into Facebook in 2020 when compared. That is a 21% rise in revenue over 2019. With so much of information Facebook collects from users, and this is what Instagram has on you. If you have Instagram installed on your mobile device, these are the information that Instagram collects from you, much more than what WhatsApp collects from you. And it was Instagram division of Facebook which had your passwords in plain text on their computers for them to go ahead and check, supposedly check if features are working properly the way they designed it to work. Facebook Messenger, on the other hand, has so much of information linked to you. So both Facebook Messenger and Instagram are things that have truckloads of information about you. So one thing that I would do is immediately uninstall these applications from my mobile phone and try my best not to use these apps on my phone. And if at all necessary, go ahead and I can go ahead and use, there are a few ad trackings that you can go ahead and check. I'm running short on time. It is 8:15. So I just, skip a couple of slides and request you to go ahead and use the browser versions of these apps instead. Please do uninstall, or you can seriously consider uninstalling these applications from your devices and use your browser-based packages so that your things work as well. And of course, there are a few etiquette that you must follow on social media about what you share on social media. Permanent record, whatever you mention on your social media stays there forever. Okay, forever. That was one factor that that breach happened. And obviously, please do have some basic understanding of cyber laws. And I'm sure the past couple of days, you have been introduced to a lot of cyber laws, and you now know that what actually is considered as a cyber security incident and what is not. Obviously, these need not be mentioned again, but I cannot emphasize more on please do not share credit card information and one-time passwords online. Social engineering attacks are so rampant out there. There are people, very senior engineers and even banking officials who have lost lakhs of rupees just because of this thing called social engineering, and especially the elderly. Now, this is wherein our responsibility comes in, that we go ahead and educate more of people. With so much of online transactions happening nowadays, people inadvertently think of when they get a call from supposedly SBI and saying that your ATM card is about to expire in 2 months, and then this person very innocently picks out his ATM card and checks it, and he sees that yes, it is about to expire in 3 months. And then, yes, okay, I made a mistake. That was supposed to be 3 months. Can you please tell me your ATM card number so that I can verify that this is you yourself? And the elderly gives this out, and suddenly he gets an OTP, and again for verification, he or she spells out the OTP, and that is the end of story. So please, educate as many people as possible. And obviously, to secure your computer, the best possible method would be to use if you're using Windows, please make sure that it is not pirated. Okay, do purchase a license. That piracy in itself is the entry point or the vulnerability that you introduce. But if you're so particular about spending money, you can consider switching to Linux as well. Because new generation Linux distributions give you much more flexibility at par to what Windows does, as user-friendly as Windows does, and as GUI-friendly as well. Obviously, make sure that you do have a firewall connected, and you have proper antivirus softwares, and most importantly, make sure that all of your software is up to date, and as far as possible, not just as far as possible, never any pirated software, because on your machine, be it Adobe Photoshop, be it whatever, MATLAB, whatever, make sure that you do not have pirated softwares on your machine that inherently introduces vulnerabilities. And if you have your smartphone with you, please make sure that the permission settings of your smartphones are properly monitored once in a while. There are applications which are at the time of installation, we just go ahead and click next, next, next. And inadvertently, you see that there are applications like, reminders which has access to your camera, or a calculator which has access to your camera. Now, why would a calculator require access to your camera or your GPS setting? A calculator just calculates, right? It takes input and it gives you output. Why would it require access to your GPS coordinates? Maybe for some feature of that particular, but make sure that it has that feature, or it has coordinate calculations to be done or so. If not, go ahead to the permission settings of your device and make sure that unwanted permissions are not enabled. And please do try your best not to use .apk files from unknown sources to install applications on your devices. So these are things that can be done. Please make sure that you verify the application that you're installing, maybe from Play Store or from iOS App Store, and not from unverified sources. And if possible, let us go ahead and try to disable location history on our phone as well. There are certain applications that does require location enabled, unless the application particularly needs location to work. You can please use a little bit of our senses to understand if a particular application requires these data, and turn on and off those applications. Further, if you can afford, please consider using a VPN service. There are free VPN services as well, but please do consider them, use them with caution. If not, you can go ahead and consider investing some amount in using a virtual private network, which gives you a little bit more of security. And especially if you're using a public Wi-Fi, we are very, very happy in using public Wi-Fi. And there was Binu sir who spoke quite in detail about using public Wi-Fis. Please do make sure that you have a VPN if you're working on a public Wi-Fi, without which, especially at airport lounges, and even, there was this interesting story that we inadvertently we go ahead and connect our mobile phones to USB ports on free stands at airport lounges to charge our phones before we walk into our gate. But please be careful about using the USB based chargers, because you do not know what is behind that wall. So if you are particular that you want to charge up your phone at an airport, please use your charger and connect onto an alternating current wall socket and use the USB of your device. And please do not connect, or try not to connect to the USB on the device. Even UB keys can be pirated. Okay, there are USB like cable like UB key pirated UB key like devices. which are very cheap, as cheap as $30, available on Amazon as well. In a nutshell, this talk was obviously to use a secure password, and please do not go ahead and reuse your password. Please do use stronger authentication methods. Please do consider using two-factor authentication, and a little bit of responsibility in using social media is in a nutshell that I want to pass on to you. And obviously, I would request you to please go ahead, and I think that is a part of this entire Cyber Suraksha campaign, that you have to go ahead and train your peers, share this information as much as possible to your peers, to the elderly community, and especially to the youngster communities, who are going to be the next billion internet users. They have to be educated properly, and they have to be guided. For that, we have to, kind of show them examples of proper cyber hygiene, and obviously be responsible in the entire digital ecosystem. Now, I think I'm right on time at 8:22. Probably we can take a couple of questions if you have, and wind up by 8:30. So that's it from me. Thank you so much for your patient listening. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to take them now.
Thank you, Shabri sir. We can get into the QA session. I have already quite a bit of questions posted, so I'll just go one by one.
Sure.
Is it safe to connect our mobile phones to laptops or PC? So I'll just modify that question a bit. Of course, you have to connect your mobile phone to your own laptop. That may be a requirement with respect to, backups and things like that. But there are people who connect it to other people's, work laptops, work desktops, for charging and things like that. So can you just look at both of that and sort of give your opinion?
Okay. What do you think? My first question is, what do you think after listening to this session? What do you think? Will it be safe to connect your mobile phone to an unknown PC? I just mentioned that connecting it to an unknown wall socket at your airport in itself is vulnerable. So do you really know what kind of applications or softwares or malware is installed on an unknown PC? PC being much, much more powerful than a mobile phone, right?
Right.
You can just go ahead, that PC can just go ahead and install some malware into your phone without showing up on your phone in any way. So please make sure that you connect your devices only to trusted systems. Your personal device, obviously, you can, or you have to trust it, but provided it is as safe as possible, as well as hygienic as possible as well.
Right. Moving on to a financial question. So this is about online purchases, right? So I'll just modify the question into different stages. There are people who save the entire credit card into their Amazon account or your Google account. There are people who will have the CVV missing. There are people who might have all these wallets connected. How much of it is safe? Would you advise against doing none of this? There is even Google cards, Google will memorize it for you. You can use it, right? So there is just different layers of this. What's your opinion?
Well, see, the claim that these applications give us is that they do not save anything in plain text. Everything is saved encrypted, is what they claim. But ultimately, we do not know. Right? We really do not know. So I would personally prefer not to save my credit card information on any application. Every time I purchase, I will go ahead, key it in, and I will erase the data or forget the data as soon as the purchase is made. For an added security, what you can, or what people generally do is, you can go ahead and use something called a virtual card. Okay, a virtual card is an option that ICICI, HDFC, and most new generation banks, I think even SBI also gives you. You can just log into on a machine, on a computer, you can log into this website, you can key in your actual credit card information and get a virtual card with a different credit card number, with a different expiry date and a different CVV, which you can go ahead and use on your devices. And the expiry date would be much lower, like maybe 3 months or 5 months, and every 3 months or 5 months you can go ahead and get a new virtual card. And if at all you suspect something to have happened in some form, maybe looking over the shoulder or any form of, if you suspect any form of breach to happen, you can readily just log in and block this virtual card of yours and get a new virtual card without affecting your actual credit card, without going through any difficulty of getting a new card or the time delay of blocking your actual card and getting those things done. So using a virtual card will be much more safe, and obviously not saving information on your mobile apps or even your browser is best. I would not advise you to save data. I personally key in every time, and I even do not permit devices to read the OTPs which come in. There are applications which read OTPs even before the OTP shows up on my device, right? It reads up the OTP and enters the data into the app. So let us try to avoid this, just for being safe. Okay, maybe I'm being paranoid to a certain extent, but I don't know. I really don't know how things work at the back end. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to social media. So you mentioned about avoiding the apps and switching to browser may be better. Yes. So what when the email account connected to it is hacked, right? So the question is, does it open a lot of doors to the hacker? So what is the way to safeguard your email other than a strong password?
Two-factor authentication.
Right.
Use multi-factor authentication, use two-factor authentication. Make sure that without multiple devices, no one can log into your device. You might by now notice every time you log in from a different IP address, maybe you get a warning message on your Google, on your email, saying that you have been, somebody is trying to log in from a different location. So I'm not, if you have enabled that setting, yes, you do get that email, and you have to go ahead and permit your device to actually log into Google. So please do consider using two-factor authentication and multi-factor authentication.
Right. So next question is a bit more researchy, I would say. Is charging our power banks on public places safe than charging out mobile phones? Right. So I've heard of side channel attacks from power and things like that. It's a little hi-fi, but your thoughts?
I'm really not sure, because the power banks, I'm not sure if the power banks has so much of electronics built into it. That depends again a lot on the power bank that you use. If it has loads of feature, then obviously it has loads of electronics inside it, which gets to be vulnerable. Otherwise, for a simple device, I'm not really sure about how that can affect to a great extent.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think time is 8:30, and I think this is the right time to conclude. I think there were several points to be taken into the individual presentations of the trainers today. Let's hope many people get to learn about these points through our trainers. Shabiri sir, thank you for an excellent session. You're a well-known speaker, and today it was one more shining example of that. We are very grateful to be associated with you in organization of this series. So we'll continue with this. We'll have another related topic, fake news and its aspects, tomorrow by Santosh sir from Cochin University tomorrow. I just want to remind you that we are planning a review session coming Sunday. We hope all the groups will be ready with your presentations. We'll have more instructions coming in tomorrow. Tomorrow, same time, let's join in Zoom. Hope you had a great learning session today. See you all tomorrow. Good night.
Thank you so much, and good night.